Customers Matter is a podcast about customer-centred, omni-channel marketing in an age of digital disruption, mobility and the Internet of Things. It's hosted by John O'Neill, a management consultant and founding owner of Commotion, an agency specialising in customer experience design and delivery.
I'm sitting here in the Victoria University City Campus in Melbourne with Teresa Tjia. Teresa is the Academic Registrar and Executive Director of Student Services at the university. Really, universities are going through a period of profound change, and there's a rapidly evolving education landscape, and the business of learning and the business of teaching is dramatically different to what it has been. And we're going to talk with Teresa today about what the age of the customer and digital disruption means for the tertiary sector. Teresa, I'd like to just start by sharing with the listeners a little bit about your own background, where you grew up, where you were educated, and how you came to be in the role you're currently in.
Well, John, thank you for this opportunity. I think I've always been very passionate about education because I came as a migrant when I was 10, and the family came from Indonesia and were Chinese Indonesians, and they went to Perth. And I think it was very much instilled into us from day one that education was our pathway to essentially opportunity and success, and that it was very much seen in our family and in our community as very transformational. So we've always been focused on education, and we've always seen it as a very important part of our lives. So I guess in some ways that's what's led me to obviously go to university, and then to essentially stay in university or in and out of university, because you meet the most amazing students and staff who are equally passionate and who are equally going through the process of really transformation.
Now, where did you study and what did you study?
So interestingly, I studied at the University of Western Australia, and I actually studied science. So I did science, not sure how well I did, but I did do both a bachelor's degree with honours and a master's degree. And I actually worked and taught in labs and in teaching, and then moved more into management.
Now, you've worked, I know, at other universities. Can you tell me which universities you've worked at, and how did you come to arrive at Victoria University in your current role?
Okay. So I've worked a number of universities probably in very different roles as well. So earlier, I think I said I worked as a scientist, I worked as an educator, and that were mainly in universities in Western Australia. I think I worked in most of them actually, in Perth. And then I actually came to Melbourne after I had a bit of a stint being the president, the elected national president of the Council of Australian Postgraduate Association, and then actually came to Melbourne University, to head up their postgraduate association. And that was a real time of growth for postgraduate students, for not only just research students, but also postgraduate coursework students. So it was a really interesting time to see that growth. And obviously now you see lots and lots more students doing postgraduate study, whether it's research or coursework. And then for Melbourne, I've ended up at Victoria University, because Victoria University really represents a university that is there to help students who are mostly first in family, who come from very diverse backgrounds, and many students who've not had opportunities, or as many opportunities, to study and to learn, and Victoria University offers that in absolutely spades.
So, Teresa, could you describe your current role and responsibilities here at the university?
Okay. So I look after everything that's to do, I guess, or most things to do with the student life cycle, from admissions, so when students apply to come to university, to graduations. But I do that in collaboration with so many parts of the university. And obviously I have a team of people, in different areas, whether it's enrollments, fees, student life, student wellbeing, customer service. But also we work very closely with other parts of the university, whether that's the Dean of Students, the academic skills support, the colleges, the academics, the IT department, the library. So the great thing about universities is a very collaborative network workplace, and you see that in everything that we do.
I think a lot of people outside the university sector don't really appreciate just how big the businesses are. Can you describe the size of Victoria University and its niche within the Australian higher education marketplace?
So one of the unique things about Victoria University is that it is what's called a dual sector university, and there are a number of those in Australia. So that means we offer everything from TAFE to PhD, so from certificate to a PhD. And so the TAFE part of the business does that vocational kind of training, and then there's the higher education type part of the business. And obviously also there's the research and other things. The other thing about Victoria University is that we have students who are both onshore and offshore. So there are some students that work on or study, I should say, on our offshore sites where we teach them with our partners. And they're from everywhere from Singapore, Malaysia, China, Vietnam. So overall, and actually on Sydney, we have a Sydney campus as well. So overall, we have probably up to 50,000 students. But if you're looking at higher education in Melbourne itself, it's probably more like about 25,000. And then there is, a number of other thousands of the TAFE students, and there's a number of others as well offshore.
In my introduction, I described us as living in the age of the customer. Do you think of your students as customers, and if so, what does that mean?
So, and I think that's the change, the significant change that we've seen in universities in the last definitely 15, years, or in the last couple of decades, is that we've seen students as much more multifaceted. Yes, they are customer in that they've got all the expectations that they want whether out of our banks or out of a shop, out of retail or out of their telco. They expect the same sorts of service, but they're also learners. They actually have to invest their own effort and their own time to getting the outcome. It's not just we spoon feed. They actually have to engage in the learning process and the learning experience. So in that sense, they're not just customers, but they're actually actively engaging as learners. And in other ways, also they're members because they're joining a community. They become lifelong members of the university community. They become our alumni, our graduates, and they stay in touch, and we encourage them to stay in touch with the university and with each other throughout their whole lives. And of course, often a lot of them make lifelong friends and connections and mentors and all those sorts of things. So, the student has become so multifaceted, and we've got to address each part of those in different ways, and we've got to be cognizant and aware of all those identities and all the different ways we need to help support service our students.
So thinking about students in that more complex manner, what's it meant for, how students are provided for now? What's changed